I just went to bed and I was able to sleep for about 3 hours. And I woke back up. What happened was I started thinking about the PTO in the Collins radio. Remember, I bought a Collins radio for $530 and it had a PTO in it. And I told you I didn't know what PTO stood for. And it's permeability tuned oscillator. In other words, an inductor tunes a coil, and the inductor moves in and out, much like the other coils on the Collins move up and down. So they took this unit and in this case, it's sealed with a desiccant gel to keep it dry inside. But I went looking, and other people have gone down the PTO rabbit hole. Let me make sure this is still recording. Okay, it's still recording. Now, I have Franklin oscillator built that uses a capacitor tuning. So, and with a digital readout, it's a test bed. And I showed you that. And I worked on a double and triple conversion radio. And along the way, I've been building different oscillators to get less drift. And I noticed a lot of people have done articles and they got them published. And they never once mentioned how much drift their oscillator has. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh, unbelievable. So I dug for about a day, and I finally found that my Collins, the one I have, has a drift of 500 hertz from the moment you turn it on until it stabilizes. So after about an hour and a half, it drifts about 50 hertz. Now I seem to remember my Franklin oscillator using a capacitor before I put the huff and puff on it. With the huff and puff, there is no drift. So my goal was to come up with an oscillator that had virtually no drift without the huff and puff. And I tried all different experiments, and you can get it very close. After it warms up, the Franklin oscillator is very good. Now, here's the really cool thing. I've been in this really deep, and I found out that inside the Collins PTO, the model that's in the R390, has a Franklin oscillator inside and a buffer, but it's done with tubes. Well, and the tubes sit outside the chamber. So what you need is a material, a ferrite material that doesn't shrink or expand with heat and cold. Now, I believe this, I have the package here. Let me get my glasses. This package for the toroid coils, do we have, yeah, it looks like it's T50-6. They're yellows. And yellow means that it's a material, and I use, this is the ferrite material I use on my Franklin oscillator to get my frequencies. And it'll do from 3 megacycles to 8. And that's just the range I like, because you can do 80 meters and 40 meters. So I'm looking at all these other projects, and people are using brass rods. Other people are using a ferrite material. I went through a box of ferrites I have, and I found this material. That's not going to help you if you read that article. Also, he never mentions how much it drifts. And I'm telling you, my Franklin oscillator that I built with this is so accurate. I really didn't need the huff and puff, but I'm going to go with it making a PTO. Now, I have the oscillator, I have the frequency counter, I have the triple conversion receiver guts off of that. All I need is an actual variable inductor. So my mind starts racing. So in my mind, I know I got this material. So you have 3 of these, right? Well, you need to mount them somehow. Now, we can make this even better by putting a sleeve of cardboard on this. This is a nylon nut, or a nylon bolt. It's a 1/4 20. we really don't have to worry about when we turn the knob. This threaded rod is going to go in and out on a piece of PVC plastic. It's going to go in and out of a coil form about this size. And I have it all designed in my head. It's just a matter of building it. So when I went to bed, it just keeps bouncing in my head. And I finally fell asleep. But then I woke up and I'm right back to where I started from. My mind's working on it. But the first step, I always say to myself, well, where are you going to get the material that doesn't expand and contract to build the PTO? Just the coil now. I have the oscillator done. So, of course, my mind says, you know, you have that ferrite material that you use for the oscillator. So, okay, so I got to string a few of them together to make a piston. So, and then I'll put a core of cardboard or oak tag, because you need to make up a little bit more just so it sits a lot nicer on this threaded rod. But in other words, you put 3 of these on to make a piston, which is going to go in and out of a coil like this. All right, and then this is going to get mounted to a front plate, and then this will be inside and it moves in and out. There's plenty of clearance. This will travel on a plate and have a knob on it. Wait till you see this. I have it all in my head, but will this ferrite material give me the range I want? And I also did Professor Coy, so I know I need 50-something turns. I'm waiting on the wire, but in other words, in order to hold them on, you put a nut on here. Now, I don't have a nylon nut, but the next video, I decide I'm really going to go all out for you. I'm going to show you how I make plastic nuts from scratch. But in other words, there's my plunger. And I can make it nicer by putting a little core of oak tag or that in the middle of these donuts. But there it is. This is the right material. It's the right frequency range. It's the right permeability for temperature. I just want to show you that. And if you can visualize, it's very simple, the coil. And once I have the coil made, I can hook it to my Franklin and give you numbers about drift. You know, I told you, you can use a huff and puff. I showed you that. You throw a huff and puff on a Franklin. A Franklin is so close and stable that the huff and puff has no trouble controlling it and keeping it on frequency. So that's one solution. But a huff and puff has an oscillator in it, a reference oscillator, and it's got a divider, chips, and it creates some noise. See, the whole thing of making a Franklin oscillator that's very stable and doesn't drift in that for a receiver is the receiver becomes more quiet. And then if you use mixers that are quiet, the receiver overall becomes very quiet. And it's just a matter of seeing how good you can make it. And I've done that. I've got the oscillator thing, but I didn't know up until, what, a month ago what a PTO was? And then what's really cool is the PTO that the Collins use is actually a Franklin oscillator. And now we're back to full circle. We're in the let's make a really stable oscillator. In their case, they use tubes. Now we're going to use FETs. That I showed you that all in my different videos. I showed you the Franklin oscillator that uses 2 FETs, and that's what I'm going to be using. And the trick is the material. I'm pretty sure it's going to work. This material, and will I be able to, with a coil form this big, get the range I want for the oscillator? But this is, I just want to show you too how my mind thinks. I just say to myself, well, I can't build it because I'm not going to start looking, start checking out different ferrite, threaded ferrite pieces for IF cans and that. And that's what the guys do. And then I noticed their articles, they got published. They never mentioned the drift factor. How stable is the oscillator? How much does it drift after an hour? How much does it? It took over a day to find out the Collins radio that everybody brags about, the R390. Now people can argue with me. It drifts 500 hertz until it hits warm-up time, and then it stays within like 50 hertz. And there are people that have taken that my exact Collins radio, they took the PTO, the tube out, and put a FET in there, and it becomes like super good. But I'm not touching mine. I'm leaving my radio. I got my radio all working. I did have a capacitor go bad. After the radio was on for 2 hours, the audio would go distorted, and I tracked it down to a bumblebee cap that became leaky. Changed that, that fixed that. So I have a working Collins radio. It's right here. It's right next to me. Here it is. It's the inspiration for this now. And I just want to, it's late at night. I'm half asleep. I need to go back to sleep. First, I got to upload this video, but this is my piston that's going to go in and out of this thing, and it's going to be so simple, and that's what I'm shooting for. I think that's it. All right, let's get some sleep.